Okay.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ben Lefebvre. I'm a reporter over at Politico. I cover energy. I have here Representative Randy Weber from Texas. If you're sadly unfamiliar with his district, it's like a big energy sandwich. He's got refineries in Sweeney. He's got LNG ports in Freeport, I believe. You've got refineries in Beaumont. You've got Galveston, which is the port of entry into the Houston Ship Channel. They've got more pipelines, and Italy has spaghetti. This guy, if you want to talk about energy, he's the one to do. So first thing I want to ask, and I apologize, we're a little bit late, but so what's with this national energy emergency? I mean, we've got record oil output. We've got more LNG than we know what to do with. We've got renewables scaling up pretty quickly. Is there an emergency there?
How much time do we have?
We got 24 minutes, but I'll give you 4 minutes. I'll give you.
Well, look, let me refine something you said about our district. I'm the upper Gulf Coast of Texas. We have 7 ports. We have more than any of the members of Congress. Our district, 14 in Texas, produces 65% of the nation's jet fuel, 80% of the nation's military-grade fuel, and 20% of the nation's gasoline east of the Rockies. We do have 3 LNG plants, okay? We are big on energy. And yes, while it's true that we're producing a lot of oil and stuff right now, we are in an energy crisis if we don't get our grid bolstered up. Winter Storm Uri, February of 21, I live north of Galveston. Right. We start the Louisiana line and go down the Texas Gulf Coast, okay? We're 1/3 of the Texas Gulf Coast. Below me is Michael Cloud, and then below that's Henry Cuellar. Mm-hmm. So we are huge on energy. Our grid needs to be bolstered up, and what that means is dispatchable, dependable, reliable energy, something that we can bring online that quick. In Texas, for those of you who don't know, and this is more than you bargained for, Texas, for those of you who don't know, is the #1 wind energy state in the country. 20% of our grid comes from wind energy. We're #1 in solar panels. 5% of our energy comes from solar panels. But we found out in Winter Storm Uri that the windmills ice up, they don't always perform.
So do the natural gas wells, correct?
Oh, absolutely. You bet we do. And so we also found out that solar panels get covered up, snow or whatever, and they don't produce. And you're hearing all this talk about AI. We have got to be moving along with energy now because, to answer your question, why are we calling it an energy emergency? Y'all are hearing AI, or you're hearing about companies moving to Texas. To put an energy plant on the ground can take 3, 4, or more years. We're trying to streamline the permitting process to take care of that, just to give you a little bit of an overview there.
For streamlining the energy process, what do you think about all these cuts to staff that DOGE is making? I mean, Interior Department saying they're going to lose like a couple thousand people. How is that going to streamline?
Well, here's what happens. You've got somebody going in there that's looking at what we call a federal bloated government agencies to make sure that we only have the people that we need. And there's about 6 agencies that have to deal with permitting and processes, for example. I won't name them all. DOE, EPA, FERC, you can go right down the list, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And they ought to all run parallel. We shouldn't have to wait for this project to get approved by one of the agencies and then let's move it to the second agency. We've had people come into our office, and I'll do it this way. In your office, in the Cannon building, I know y'all can't vote for me, at least legally, but I vote for y'all every day. I have people come in the Cannon office and say, we would put a facility, whether it's nuclear or something, on the ground. They could build it. It could be a $6 billion, $8 billion, $10 billion. They could build it in 2.5 to 3.5 years. But the permitting process takes 6, 7 years sometimes.
Do you trust DOGE to are they getting rid of the people who are the bloat? Or, I mean, it sounds like they're just putting heads on a wall.
Well, no, I would say that they're going through with a fine-tooth comb and they're saying, look, this agency ought to run leaner and meaner. And there's no reason, as I said earlier, it takes 6, 7 years to get a permit done. There's just no reason.
Now, you're part of the Energy Committee. Do you know what committee oversees DOGE?
Really, I don't.
Are you planning to bring them in for any kind of oversight hearing, like to make sure they're doing it right?
Well, I think you have the president to do that. Some people say that that Elon Musk is an unelected president, but here's the fact: every president in American history has the right to have his or her own advisors, right? So people are griping about that, but look, the president has got his own advisors. I know when George W. Bush, who was from, Texas governor, when he had advisors, one of them was Laura Bush, his wife. Yeah. And so, they have the right to have advisors.
Right. So let's say 2028 comes along, we see a big swing in the electorate. We get President AOC decides to hire Mark Cuban to go through the government and say, look for anything that might, at first they declare a climate emergency, and they say, look for anything that might tie the U.S. to stranded fossil fuel assets or something, which was the environmentalists kept bringing. Do you think that DOGE gives them a pathway to do that?
There's an old saying, to the victor goes the spoils. So, you know what, if the Democrats get in power, that's what they choose to do. That's what they choose to do.
Okay. I talked to an oil lobbyist during the first Trump administration who mentioned that he had a drink. And he said
had a what?
He had a drink in him before when he was saying this. But he said the Trump administration, he liked the Trump
They didn't
administration's
offer me a
energy.
drink when I came in, just so you know.
We can reorder? No. No, when they were very in favor of President Trump's energy policy, but he said that Trump's trade policy is the dagger in the heart of his energy policy. What would you say to that?
I don't think so, because we've watched President Trump. He will threaten countries, and we've seen this movie before. And you watched a lot of those countries turn around and get in line with. There's no reason why their trade policy should impose over our trade policies, because they're taking advantage of the American economic system. And President
Canada's
Trump's
doing that, or?
Well, not just them, but more of them. You saw Canada and Mexico, where President Trump was talking about tariffs, and what they do? Well, they started singing a different tune. So listen, he's watching that. I think you're going to see him, and that also goes. I know this is energy, but that also goes for NATO overseas and the European Union. So he's doing that on multiple fronts.
So Trump last night, I think, said he wanted to support Keystone XL, the big pipeline project out of Canada. If you were going to talk to the company that's behind Keystone XL, what would you tell them about, yeah, we want you to do it, but we're going to put a 25% tariff on your oil, and there might be tariffs on your steel as well?
Well, I'm gonna back up in front of that. The Keystone Pipeline would have come into my districts, 830,000 barrels of oil a day. Of course, it came from Canada, went through Cushing, Oklahoma, down into Port Arthur, Texas. They're on the Gulf Coast. Let me put that in perspective. When you're moving that kind of product, 830,000 barrels of product a day, and yes, we have a lot of energy, but we can produce more. We can sell it to countries overseas. We can continue to make money. People say, well, we have an energy glut. No, we don't. We ought to be making as much as we can. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve, I didn't mention this earlier, 60% of the SPR is in my district, District 14. And we have, President Biden almost depleted the SPR. We ought to be filling that back up. Now look, when you take 830,000 barrels of product a day, and people say, we don't like pipelines. They're dangerous, they blow up, blah, 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 blah. Well, you want to talk about how many 18-wheelers it takes to move 830,000 barrels of oil a day? It takes about 5,300. Who wants 5,300 18-wheelers, diesel trucks, tankers on the highway every day? Get the Keystone Pipeline in place. Now, whether or not he wants to charge, the president wants to charge tariffs to Canada, that's something that can be negotiated deal by deal.
Exempt them from tariffs?
Well, I mean, I've never been in the tariff business, but I'm sure the president has the authority to do it the way he likes.
Yeah, but then you're getting into, the oil industry's long-time slogan is, we want stability. And so in that case, I think you'd be asking them, well, you might get a waiver from tariffs or you might not.
Well, I think that commitment would be made up front before they ever agreed to the project. I want to go back to something earlier than that, when President Obama was in office, 2008, 2012. Some of y'all may know I was in the Texas House of Representatives. It was before I got demoted to Congress. But we watched energy way back then. And here's the thing. I thought President Obama, I talked to him, I met him. To his credit, he came to the Republican conference and spoke to us. And I talked to him specifically, his second term, I got elected in 2012. And I talked to him specifically, Mr. President, we'd like to see that project approved, that pipeline permit approved. He said they were working on it. But then, of course, he denied it. And then President Trump comes in and he reinstates it. Maybe we ought to have a law that says if a president says this permit is approved, because did I mention some of these projects take 4, 5, 6, 7 years or more, then the succeeding presidents can't revoke that permit.
Would that go with taking offshore acres
off
the table for oil?
That's exactly right. And here's the thing: federal offshore permits, drilling permits offshore, right, federal, and permits on land, federal permits offshore and on land. If you combine them all together, what Biden put a pause on, Obama did too, in some respect. If you put all those together in 2019, I think was a year, together the on land federal permits and offshore produced enough oil and gas energy that if it was a country, it'd be the 9th largest country in the world. That's how much energy is on federal lands and federal leases offshore.
Getting back to international relations and energy, I mean, we saw President Trump in this latest term, his first kind of international action was with the Colombian president. They were saying we're going to put tariffs on Colombia.
You say his latest term, you mean this
time? I'm sorry, yes, correct. And then the Colombian president went and canceled a joint venture between Occidental Petroleum, which I'm not sure if they're in Houston, but I don't think it's in your district, and the state-run oil company in Colombia. I mean, are you hearing from companies saying this back and forth, this kind of upheaval in international relations is hurting our business? Is that something they're bringing to you?
We're not hearing that, but I would postulate this thought process about that. When the president goes in there and he starts flexing American muscles, because that's what it is. The United States is the largest, strongest country in the world, and best in my opinion. When he starts making moves to get other countries to fall in line, some of y'all will remember, you might not, how many of y'all remember the name E.F. Hutton? TV commercials, here's one right here. E.F. Hutton, when they speaks, people listen. When President Trump speaks, people listen, and so do the leaders of those countries.
The Canadian energy minister was in town a few weeks ago. The defense minister was in town. The trade minister was in town. They're talking about the need to de-risk from the United States. I mean, that's the message they're getting from President Trump.
Oh, there's a lot of it going back and forth. And you know, when he makes them our 51st state, that won't be a problem.
Well, we'll see. How many senators do they get?
How many senators they get?
Yeah.
I guess they get 2 like everybody else.
The other thing I was going to ask, we saw Doge withholding payments for contracts that Congress already approved in the previous Congress. Is there any worries that Congress proposes, Doge disposes? I mean, are you guys still worried that anything you approve in a reconciliation package is going to be only the first draft?
Well, that's a catchy phrase, but it's only just a phase, so we got to do away with it so we can get on with it. Did y'all see what I did there? So look, they're going to examine every contract piece by piece. So we really can't say, well, blanket statement, no, y'all can't do that, or you shouldn't have done that, or you shouldn't have done this. We will see what they do with reconciliation. That remains to be seen. We're going to start having some votes pretty quick here.
Yeah, but I mean, like if Doge comes in and says, well, Congress approved X number of money for, developing data centers, we want to be the ones to put out those contracts. We want to make sure that the counterparty is safe.
I don't think they're going to have that kind of authority.
Okay.
They're going to depend on Congress to move forward with this reconciliation.
Okay. And when it comes to data centers, I mean, are you thinking, is it going to be a big deal for Texas? Electricity demand, do you think the market's a little bit frothy right now? I know all the talk is about we're going to need more for AI, but we're also seeing, I think it was Microsoft saying they were going to cancel a bunch of leases for data centers because they were a little bit worried. I mean, what's your forecast on how much this is going to actually become a big thing?
I just instructed y'all staff, because I know y'all can't vote for me, but we still work for y'all every day. I just instructed our staff yesterday. I said, look, I don't know about all these data centers coming in. I don't know how many there are. I don't know what the power requirements are. Of course, depends on what map you use. There's 6 to 9 grids across the United States of America. As y'all know, Texas has most of Texas is in ERCOT, Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which when I was in the Texas legislature, I was on the Environmental Red Committee, and we had purview over the ERCOT and PUC, Public Utility Commission. So I think what's going to happen is at some point we've got to decide how much power is needed for these data centers, number one, and number two, it has to be incumbent upon the company that's coming in to make sure that they can get the energy they need. And if they can't, then we don't want them crashing those different grids, and we've got to decide that up front. We've got to get in business progress and get some more energy in this country.
Is there any talk about integrating the Texas electric grid with the other states?
Do we have any Texans in the room? We've got 4 or 5 of them that will admit it.
I lived there for 6 years.
You lived there for 6 years. In Texas, we have a bumper sticker and a slogan, and it says, "Don't mess with Texas." Some of y'all have seen that, right? And so, we're not wanting to get our grid tied in with the federal grid.
Okay. Are you doing any town halls recently, or have you done any?
No, we've been so busy, I've not done town halls.
Okay. I know one of your neighbors, Pete Sessions, got an earful at a town hall.
It does happen.
I mean, are you hearing from constituents at all worried about, like,
Let me give a lighthearted anecdote to what happened to me in one of the last town halls we did. I had a guy way in the back stand up when he was heckling me. He said, Weber, if you were St. Peter, I wouldn't vote for you. I just looked at him, I said, buddy, if I was St. Peter, you wouldn't be in my district. Some of y'all will get that later.
Yeah. The Dallas, the Fed board in Dallas said, if the tariffs do go through with Canada and Mexico, it would erase about up to 30% of GDP growth in Texas. I think they said something like Texas is like in the middle of the highway for any tariff fight. Are you communicating with the White House at all about what this could do for that area?
Well, we're not. We have some of our colleagues are. Texas, our number one trading partner is Mexico, and our number two is Canada. And so there was a lot of talk about when Rick Perry was in office, of doing a highway right up from Brownsville all the way up through Texas. Of course, we couldn't make a law that said what it would do from then on, but it was to do with just exactly that, move trade. How that's going to affect that trade, I don't know, but I do know this: Texas' number one trading partner is Mexico. Texas' number two is Canada. So what happens will have an impact on us. I will give Governor Abbott a shout out. He's on top of this stuff. I've dealt with Governor Abbott on many, many occasions. If it was going to be a problem for Texas, I think he would have been either singing out loud or he would have gone to talk to the president directly.
Okay, but you haven't. You haven't talked to the White House about what it would do to your state?
No, and I don't feel the need unless. And Governor Abbott came and met with the Texas Republicans delegation on Capitol Hill. Was it week before last? I've been out of the country for a week, so yeah, week before last. So,
what were you doing?
Israel. We went to Israel.
Oh, okay. And then recently, the Energy Department's Energy National Labs said they felt the impact of funding freeze, tens of millions of dollars. You wrote a letter, right? And you asked. A lot of other colleagues seem to be fine with that, but I mean, what was your thinking of stepping up for the national labs?
Well, there are 17 national labs in the United States. Of course, I'm on Science, Space, and Technology Committee. And so we want to make sure that that kind of funding is in place because that is our prosperity going forward. And I don't know how many of y'all have been to any of the national labs, but they do a really good job and they're really, really necessary. And on Science, Space, and Technology Committee, for example, we deal with them a lot. We have that purview. And so we pay close attention to it, and we want to keep that kind of innovation coming.
Now, we have the president saying at one time he wants higher oil production, and he wants to slash fuel energy prices by half. I mean, that sounds good for, I guess, us, but for the companies in your district, what do they think about that?
Well, I haven't had much input, quite frankly. I think what they're going to do is they're going to watch and see exactly how long it takes and what that means to their bottom line, how much energy production they can ramp up, because there's an economy of savings, and the more energy you produce, the cheaper you can produce it. We'll see.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate taking the time out.
But thank y'all.